Just like her pioneer ancestors, Heather has made her backstory a huge part of her current story, and we understand this blazing a new trail to be a big motivator of why she is on the show. My name is Laura, this is Housewives Biographies, a viral series I've been hosting on TikTok that I am updating and elaborating on for YouTube. Heather is born and bred in the LDS Church. Her parents were married in the Salt Lake Temple, and Heather is one of 6 children. Heather's father actually worked for the FBI. I'm going to be pulling quite a bit from her book throughout this video. Heather shares in her book that, especially as a child, she truly believed her role in life was to be a mother. To me as a reader, this kind of allowed for a timeline of her entrepreneurial journey. Like, she felt like she had to get things done before she became a mother. When Heather goes to college at BYU in Utah, she's working a couple of different jobs. She's working at a tanning salon. She eventually becomes the manager of this tanning salon. She started a small jewelry business for herself in college, and she even won an honorable mention at BYU's Entrepreneurial Student of the Year. She shares in her book that she lost the main award to the people that started 1-800-CONTACTS. Heather shares a bit about an internal conflict she had choosing her major in college. She shares that she wanted to choose something that would make her an appealing prospect for marriage. She ultimately graduates with a degree quite general in like the humanities and in the arts. I will put the full title on the screen. And after graduating from college, Heather goes on a mission with the LDS Church. It's my understanding that she is the only cast member that completed a mission. Heather talks a lot about her mission in the book because it seems like she had a generally very positive time. She's sent to the south of France, and she's very proud to recount that she was a pretty successful missionary, that she got something like 18 people to join the LDS Church, which was significantly higher than average. On the show, we know that Lisa Barlow's son goes on a mission, and when he announces this or when the group learns about it, because she no longer supports the LDS Church, and I think more accurately because she speaks out so much about the LDS Church, she definitely had a problem with Lisa's son going on this mission and promoting the church. And it seems like in those scenes where she's talking about Lisa's son going on a mission, that Heather is holding some guilt for her part in converting anyone to the LDS Church and promoting the LDS Church abroad. In July of 2000, Heather marries her husband, Billy. They're married at the LDS Temple in Hawaii. We know there's kind of a larger community of the LDS Church in Hawaii, like BYU has a campus in Hawaii. Heather has shared on the show, and she also shares in the book, that a big part of her motivation in marrying Billy was not just that he was a good person or that she saw a future with him. She wasn't necessarily deeply in love, but she loved that he was Mormon. Heather's husband, Billy, has been largely regarded as Mormon royalty by the show, by the book, by anyone who talks about him. Billy's grandfather was Howard Hughes's driver. He's sometimes referred to as Howard Hughes's henchman. The point being, Billy's family inherited a very large estate that is now allegedly worth billions with a B. Heather shares in the book that almost immediately after they are married, they're doing this like mini moon honeymoon a few days in Hawaii. She is reflecting on the marriage, and she is realizing kind of immediately that she's not in love with him, and she feels like she made a mistake. Heather describes very consciously choosing to be in this marriage, very consciously choosing to build a life with Billy. We know that they go on to have 3 children together, and Heather and Billy divorce 11 years later. Billy is the one to leave Heather in her book. This divorce is a catalyst for Heather to reflect on her religion and her relationship with the LDS Church, and like how deeply she ties her sense of self to the values of the church. Heather has shared that after her divorce, she was very largely shunned by the LDS Church and by their congregation. She could still attend church, but because she was divorced, she just wasn't given like the same respect as other members of the church. So like, for example, she shares that her kids were not being invited to things anymore by other families in the congregation. She's super aware that she is being excluded from things because she has been divorced. This divorce even prompts a big rift in Heather's own immediate family because divorce is so frowned upon within the religion. We hear Heather refer to herself as born and bred Mormon quite a bit throughout the show, and in the book she also describes her parents as having been born and bred in the LDS Church. The close friends she had in her life at the time were also members of the LDS Church, and she doesn't feel supported during the divorce, during this like huge transition in her life by her friends, by her community. So again, at this point, she's really rethinking a lot of the relationships she has with her life, with her immediate family, with her friends, with her neighbors, with the people that she has known her whole life. And at this point in the book is when we're introduced to the title of the book, Bad Mormon. Heather shares that she wishes she could still be herself and be a good Mormon. Even the title Bad Mormon, we know that the LDS Church sued Heather in trying to make merch with the name of the book. I'm not totally sure of the outcome of that, but she did talk about this a little bit on her special, where she's like sitting down and interviewing people who have left the LDS Church. Heather's co-parenting relationship with Billy is generally described as pretty amicable. After their divorce, Heather remains a stay-at-home mom, and Billy is financially supporting the family. Their divorce was filed in 2011, but it wasn't finalized until 2014. And then in 2017 is when Heather and her business partner open up Beauty Lab and Laser, their med spa. In one of the first few episodes of the show, when Heather is introducing her med spa to audiences, she describes this like LDS church value that perfection is attainable as a big motivator in why med spas do very well in Utah, why she wanted to open a med spa. There's now 2 locations. The reviews are fabulous. Going back a little bit, speaking on the challenges of Heather and her immediate family after her divorce, we do see Heather working through some of these challenges on season 2 when the women go to Colorado. She's meeting one of her sisters. They're talking about her parents and the passing of her father. Heather's father had passed in 2020, and she is looking to like host a memorial or some remembrance event in some capacity. At that point, we also learned that 2 of Heather's siblings, so 3 of the 6 total children, are no longer members of the LDS church. We have seen Heather's ex-husband Billy on the show, and again, on camera, it seems like their co-parenting relationship is amicable. He seems supportive. There's a scene where he goes to a beauty lab and laser event, seemingly obviously in support of her. And in those early seasons, she was also sharing quite a bit about her children's understanding of their relationship with the LDS church. She shared that as her kids were growing up, they were also starting to like understand how their mother had been excluded from many things within the church. And it's kind of my understanding from the show that none of her children are currently practicing. We've seen them all go off to college, and we've seen Heather like continue to embrace this like post LDS church life. Moving on a little bit to my compartmentalized personal opinion of Heather. I think originally Heather served as a really crucial type of character for this show. I always say every franchise has a theme. Salt Lake City is religion. And Heather, especially in those early seasons, was so actively working through her feelings and her challenges with the LDS church that she had so deeply tied her sense of self to. The church storyline was very consistent for Heather in those first few seasons. Her taglines were always talking about her ancestors or like referencing the church in some way. Again, in those early seasons, her character was really focused on reflecting on religious indoctrination. And like, even though she had been a single mom for a long time at that point, this was something that she was still clearly working on and reflecting on, and almost directly asking us to the camera, like, who am I without the church? This story becomes so crucial to the theme, not only because Heather herself is working through it and other women are making comments or like working through religion in their own ways, but Heather is also a character that's deeply tied to Whitney. Whitney is someone who on camera has also been very actively working through religious trauma. I think their relationship is special. It definitely has had its ups and downs throughout the seasons, but there have been so many scenes where Heather and Whitney have so clearly needed each other as they are working through these like religious challenges that they're still holding on to. We know that Heather and Whitney share a common ancestor. I believe they are third cousins, and they just refer to themselves as cousins on the show. They've clearly bonded a lot over like sharing logistics of leaving the church. We see Whitney actually removing her name from the church logs. Now, especially in the last few seasons, a lot of people have referred to Heather as a narrator. I think this is like actually totally intentional by both Heather and production. A lot of her book is looking to like expose secrets of the LDS church. We know that she's recently released a 3-part series, Surviving Mormonism, where she is continuing to share her findings about just like the moral breaks that she understands with the LDS church. Again, she's interviewing people who have left the church, who have experienced just horrific trauma at the hands of the church. Anytime on the show when there's a scene of the LDS church being mentioned, it cuts to a confessional of Heather like explaining what this means in the context of the LDS church. So like there's a scene where Heather is talking to Meredith's kids and she asks if they know what soaking is, and then she cuts to a confessional scene where she's like explaining it for the camera. So yeah, Heather has positioned herself both on the show and external to the show as this like expert in all things LDS church. She's branded herself both in these confessionals and in her more public persona outside of Housewives as this like spokesperson for the excommunicated. So like while the show has given her this platform to be the voice of the excommunicated or however she wants to brand herself, the platform is allowing for this public persona, this like takedown or exposure of the LDS church. I also think there's a really clear shift of when Heather became the narrator, how she's treated by production and like what she does for the storyline of the show. Season 4 in Bermuda, where Heather is like the ringleader delivering receipts proof timeline to Monica, exposing this woman as an internet troll. She's like reading out Monica's crimes, and this is really what made her the narrator. How do we see that today, now like 3 full seasons later? It seems like Heather is almost the voice of the folks online. She's happy to bring up any allegations, any rumors. We're not getting a lot of solo scenes of Heather like working through things in her personal life today. I always say not everyone needs a storyline. I think there has to be some people that are like relatively neutral moving the story along. But the challenge with Heather in the way way that she presents on camera, a lot of audiences refer to her as a bit of a producer plant. And when people say producer plant, they're generally referring to a person on a cast that's like taking notes from producers or seems to be really like receptive to comments by production or like encouragement by production to bring up certain things. I do think this adds to an interesting dynamic that she has with the rest of the cast, where it seems like some of her loyalties are kind of confusing. So for example, I mentioned this during our Lisa Barlow video. On this most recent season finale, Heather asked Lisa what she actually does, what her businesses actually are. And I'm of the belief, that I don't think Heather would have come up with this on her own because we didn't hear any questioning of Lisa's businesses throughout the season. Maybe it's that she's questioning like how busy is Lisa truly, that she feels like she doesn't have time for us or she lives such a different life than us. But this conversation of like what are Lisa's businesses real was something that was happening very heavily online, and this is a very online cast. So I wouldn't totally be surprised if Heather like went looking for what are people saying about Lisa Barlow and her businesses. When Heather was first introduced on the show, she was a good friend of Jen Shah. And we saw Heather really having a hard time with this friendship, especially in season 3 after Jen had been arrested and was awaiting her hearing. Heather seems to remain so loyal. There are moments where she is asking Jen directly, did you actually do this? I believe it's Heather and Whitney who take Jen out to these like mud baths, and they're just trying to like better understand Jen's story. At no point while Jen is on the show does Heather like express any concern or any like disbelief, I suppose, in how Jen is presenting her innocence. But after Jen is gone, we see Heather like clearly having a hard time like working through this on camera, that Jen was not the friend that she thought she was, that Heather was so willing to be loyal because she wanted to believe her friend. And similarly, like a lot of people believe that Jen is the one that gave Heather that black eye. Heather for a very long time just said like, well, what do you think it looks like? Or that she just didn't remember how it happened. So at that moment, a lot of us were questioning like, why is she so loyal to this woman when it seems like everyone else on the cast is starting to have their suspicions about her and her innocence? And I think even today, having closed off the most recent season 6, Heather is still in this place of like an original cast member that is protecting the nest. Like she wants to make sure that anyone coming into this group has pure intentions or means well or is being honest about themselves. So we see her even clearly working through this with Bronwyn. When Bronwyn was introduced last season, Heather had a very hard time like wanting to be friends with her, and Bronwyn didn't really understand this. Like, why is this woman questioning me to the extent that she is? There's kind of like a two-sided challenge here where Heather has been so loyal to Lisa historically that if Lisa and Bronwyn were having a problem last season, Heather was going to remain loyal to Lisa. But the other challenge at the time is that Heather is still being like protective of the nest. Again, making sure that anyone who comes into this group has pure intentions or means well or is presenting themselves accurately. And we've seen that flip a little bit, right? In the most recent season finale, we certainly didn't see like Heather and Bronwyn becoming great friends this last season. But when we saw a rift between Heather and Lisa, we now see Heather and Bronwyn kind of like tag teaming their challenges with Lisa. It seems like as Heather presents it, the challenges that she has with Lisa are again leaning into this like, who truly are you? Are you presenting yourself truthfully to the rest of us? So all that to say, like while audiences seem to be tired of Heather being this narrator, I unfortunately think it's probably necessary for this show, like discussing a community that is so different from the rest of the US. And she's aligned herself so much with this narrator persona that it kind of makes sense that she is like so deeply concerned about people being truthful. I think I'll pause this there. This has been the Housewives biographies on Heather Gay. We have one more woman of Salt Lake left, Whitney Rose. Thank you so much for hanging out. You can subscribe and follow along, and I'll see you next time.